Now it's time to get a sense of the press reviews around the world, and French suburbs, cities, of many of the newspapers around the world covering the same story. These riots, the third day, anger and protests continuing after the police shooting of 17-year-old Nahel earlier this week. Well, let's get a sense of how it's been covered. Deeptika Laurent is here to take a look. Deeptika, it's hard to miss this story.
Yeah, it is hard to miss the story in the French press, but also the international press today, Gavin. Looting, car satellite, fireworks in the streets, clashes with police and protesters. For the Swiss paper Le Temps, we're starting with Le Temps. Look at this. They're going with this very impressive photo here on their front page, and that headline there reads, French suburbs are burning with rage, it says on its front page, noting also that the officer in question who shot and killed Nahel is now in detention, and the speed at which this police officer has been detained is extremely rare in France. He has also since apologized to the family, but the death of Nahel also sparked an escalation in tensions. That's Le Soir, which is a Belgian paper, also headlining on this here on its front page, says escalation, it says, in France, again going with some pretty spectacular photos of the buildings set alight. Similar headline from the French paper Le Parisien. High tensions, it says on its front page, noting here that this situation, according at least to the president of the Association of Mayors in France, is even more explosive than in 2005. Let's show you Le Figaro, which is a right-wing paper here in France. Also a similar headline, high tensions, it says. Similar pages. I want to draw your attention just to the editorial today here. The paper focusing on, critiquing rather the political exploitation of that peaceful march held in remembrance of Nahel yesterday. An exploitation, the paper says, by a wide range of groups, from disenfranchised youths from the suburbs to militant anti-police associations to those from the left-wing France Unbowed Party. This is a right-wing paper, so that kind of line, editorial line, is pretty much expected now. From the on the other side of the political spectrum, L'Humanité, which is a communist paper, is going with this headline, actually a headline-free front page today. You'll see there is actually no headline. The headline is here. They've actually used the slogan from this image, Justice for Nahel, so you really get a sense of where they stand, really on the side of the protesters and those who want justice for that young man.
Is an incredible picture on the front cover, isn't it? And also you mentioned Le Soir with the protests going on in Brussels, 2 arrests being made, this spread to neighbouring country. One of the things that you picked up on is, and a lot of the papers mention this, don't they, the comparisons between 2005, the riots there, and also another big incident in 2007.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, 20 minutes, which is a street paper, pretty much sums it up here. It says there's this air of déjà vu on its front page. The paper really summing it up there, but also you have the Independent. Let's draw your attention to the Independent's front page here, focusing on the riots up the top here. And in its headline here, it calls it the worst riots in 18 years after police, quote unquote, execute teenagers. There's some very strong language. You'll remember in 2005 and notably in 2005, riots back then led to a state of emergency, which is something completely unprecedented in France at the time. So there is certainly those comparisons. Now, if you want to get a sort of sense of why this particular death has caused so much anger, there's a really interesting article in the New York Times. I won't sum it up, but I'll just give you a few lines. Many of those who came out to Nahel's vigil yesterday didn't know him, but the New York Times says they saw their own plight in his story. French Algerian, or French Moroccan, or French Muslim, or French and Black, in minority-dominated enclaves in a France, I quote, that claims not to see differences in race. But we all know in reality that's not the case, and particularly when it comes to young men and the police in France.
Yeah, and how to stop the momentum now of the riots in the streets, with all of the appeals for calm from the government. Maybe we'll hear again from President Macron today, who's at the EU summit. Moving on to another story that's getting big attention. This death in Mexico, a vigilante crusader trying to take on the drug cartels then getting ambushed.
Yep, that's right. It's on the front page of La Jornada, a Mexican paper. His name was Hipólito Mora. He was one of the founders of the self-defense movement. He was killed alongside his bodyguards yesterday. Their armored truck was then set alight in an ambush. He did receive death threats on a daily basis. This is in El País, Spanish paper. He was a former lime farmer who helped launch a rural revolt against narco-traffickers a decade ago in the state of Michoacán. He and other farmers took up arms against a particular cartel that specialized in methamphetamine production. The group even managed to expel the cartel from their lands in what was an extremely bloody confrontation.
And finally, this exhibition showcasing new iconic creations in London's fashion over 3 decades.
That's right, Gavin. You'll be able to get up close and personal with some of the most outrageous fashion outfits worn by celebrities in the past 30 years, created by British designers. Who can forget that, notably that strange contraption that the Icelandic singer Björk wore at the 2001 Oscars, the swan dress that landed her a spot on the worst dressed list. This from Sam Smith, the singer. I'm not quite sure what you can call it, an inflatable outfit, I guess, or as you saw there, Kate Moss's Union Jack jacket. All of this will be on display. Creations that are not always conventional, but have made their mark in the fashion world. And isn't that what it's all about, after all?
Yeah. I do remember, Deeptika, how squeaky that Sam Smith suit was when you hear it go by. Deeptika Laurent, thank you.